Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Women in Tech United States, our wonderful fireside chat. We have a great evening in store for you. My name is Sydney Madison Prescott, and I am proud to open up tonight's chat as the East Coast Chapter Ambassador for Women in Tech US. I am currently also a global intelligent automation lead at Spotify, and I am broadcasting to you live from New York City. So let's start out by thinking through what has been going on the past few years, months, and even days. That's going to be a bit of the underlying current of the chat that we'll be having tonight. And as well, we're going to introduce some really great additional components of the Women in Tech program, including Women in Tech Youth. And we'll give you a sneak peek at what is going to look like. So going back to the heart of tonight's chat, which is going to be with Danielle Geathers, and also we are going to have a great moderator, Tayo Rockson. So there's been a lot of conversations around the country about the institutions of our society, from the criminal justice system to the media to academia. The discussions that are being held are centered firmly around what it means to change the internal dynamics of existing institutions and power structures to ensure that all Americans have access to a well-known trifecta in our country, which is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. As Americans start to consider the ramifications of implicit bias, white privilege, and the dynamics of overall power in this country, one question remains. What is it going to take to fundamentally institute sweeping reforms across industries which have otherwise lacked true transformation? As I considered this recalibration of thought and ideologies in preparation for tonight's fireside chat, I had an epiphany. Real change truly comes from the dynamics within our circles of peers. Thinking about the barriers to entry, which have been predominantly male, predominantly Caucasian since inception in terms of technology, brings up some very difficult questions. What will it take to usher in a new era of diversity in the tech sector? Does it start with academia? Does it start with students acknowledging the time has come to amplify the voices of Black, Indigenous, persons of color, along with the voices of women leaders in the technology sector? It sounds as if the answer to this question might be yes, according to the student body at the prestigious Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And so with that, I'd like to start and give you an overview of our moderator and our esteemed fireside chat guest. So Tayo Rockson is going to be the moderator for tonight's events. Tayo is a writer, speaker, consultant, and media personality who runs UYD Management, which is a strategic leadership and consulting firm that helps organizations incorporate sustainable diversity and inclusion practices. As someone who has lived on 4 continents, he is an authority in communicating effectively across cultures. In addition to that, he's been named a top 40 millennial influencer by New Theory magazine. He hosts the popular As Told by Nomads podcast, and his book, Use Your Difference to Make a Difference, is based on how to connect and communicate in a cross-cultural world. Now on to our wonderful fireside chat guest, Danielle Geathers. Danielle is a rising junior and a mechanical engineering major at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, otherwise known as MIT. Danielle was elected the 2020-2021 Undergraduate Association president. She is the first Black woman to serve in this role in MIT's 159-year history. The Undergraduate Association is the undergraduate student government body that represents 4,530 undergraduates at MIT and includes over 150 volunteers. Geathers was elected in the first contested election since 2017, despite being confronted with the unique challenges due to the COVID-related transitioning to remote learning that MIT commenced in the middle of March 2020. Geathers' success was hard fought as she leveraged social media and Zoom to win MIT's first virtual election. Geathers began her tenure at MIT as a member of the women's varsity soccer team and ended with recognition with the Black Women's Alliance Freshman of the Year Award and both the Black Student Union's Vibranium Award and the Fight the Power Award. She was also awarded the Lockheed Martin STEM Scholarship. During her sophomore year at MIT, Danielle served as the UA's Officer on Diversity and chaired its Community and Diversity Committee. She also served on the Institute's Committee on Undergraduate Admissions and Financial Aid, where she successfully advocated for the elimination of SAT subject tests in the MIT admissions process. Her efforts were recognized by the Office of Minority Education with the Community Excellence Award. Danielle has also been recognized as a Coca-Cola Scholar, Foot Locker Scholar, Burger King Scholar, National AP Scholar, and a Silver Knight Award winner. Danielle was one of 4 women chosen to nationally receive the Women and Girls in Soccer Scholarship and was named the 2018 Miami-Dade County Female Scholar Athlete of the Year. So without further ado, I invite our esteemed guest, Danielle Geathers, the current student body president at MIT, and this evening's moderator, Taya Rockson, to take the virtual stage.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sydney. It's a real pleasure. Thank you for the kind words and the opening message.
Absolutely, it's an honor.
That was great.
Yeah, the pleasure's mine. So I guess without further ado, Danielle, I just got to start the interview with asking how you are. I feel like the world is a little different.
Yeah, it's definitely been hectic. I think being sent home from COVID-19 was a dramatic change for a lot of college students. And then campaigning during that was crazy. And now with the national conversations on race and hearing the news about Black death in general can be very saddening. But I think I'm happy that I have a way to make change in my own environment.
That's right. You now have a platform. You're the first Black female president. First of all, how does that feel?
I'm happy. I'm excited, but I'm mostly humbled to serve. I think few people get the opportunity to serve their community in this way. So I'm very excited that as the first Black woman in this role, I can hopefully open the door for people coming up behind me.
I have no doubt that you will, but let's dive into that platform of yours. What is your platform and what do you hope to achieve by the end of your tenure?
So our slogan is actually funny. It was choose different. So kind of like your book.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was choose different, and our values were unity, equity, and authenticity. So I think me and my running mate are really social butterflies. We love meeting new people, kind of really are passionate about inclusion in general. So our campaign was really about bringing in a lot of people who wouldn't typically vote in an election, don't think student government does anything for them. So our campaign was really the people's campaign, bringing people in.
I think that's so cool because I'm thinking about SGA and student government associations, and there is that sentiment that does exist. Well, what is happening? How does that happen? But your campaign strikes me as a little different from that because not only do you have this amazing platform, you are very keen on being intentional about the recruiting process of women and Black people as well as other persons of color. I'm curious how you feel like you can do that in a COVID world, but also, in MIT, which, historically has probably not have as much diversity as it could have.
Yeah, I think one thing that Cindy mentioned as well was that we got rid of the subject test this year.
Yeah.
So us requiring students to take 2 subject tests that had to be one in math and one in science just had such a high barrier for entry just to apply to MIT, not even to get through the application process. So that was crazy. So we got rid of that. So I'm really hoping that diversity will come in that way. But on top of that, I think just the UA, our student government, hasn't done a lot with recruiting in the past, but I'm hoping that, especially in this new role, being a first, I can really translate my position into showing that MIT is an inclusive place and that Black females are welcome here. So I'm excited for that. I think given COVID, it'll be really iffy with AP tests. A lot of people are doing them virtually. So I have no idea how we will end up even evaluating test scores. So it could be a really good opportunity to increase diversity.
I agree, and I think one of the critics or the criticisms of diversity and inclusion in the past, at least from critics, would say, "Hey, it's meritocracy. Come on, I did it. Why can't you do it? I mean, it's everyone's got the same opportunity." What do you have to say to that?
Yeah, I think MIT really loves the meritocracy phrase. I think a meritocracy is great if everyone's starting on the same playing field, which isn't true always, or kind of never true, honestly. Especially when we're talking about STEM foundational background. Like the K to 12 pipeline is not functioning well for several people around the nation, and those people tend to be Black and brown. So if we're comparing them when they're in 12th grade to other people who come from more privileged backgrounds, it's just not going to be comparable, and it's not a meritocracy.
Absolutely. And thanks for breaking that down. I feel like I can't even continue without acknowledging some of the things we've been experiencing, because we did touch on it early on, but something that I think about a lot, especially with your position right now and with the amount of eyeballs that you have, is people seem to be listening for the first time to Black folks, right? And in that vein, you see allyship on certain spectrums, right? There's the performative, and then there's the active. What are your thoughts on making sure you're actually doing the work and staying away from just, I guess, virtue signaling or, being performative?
Yeah, I think it's funny. Performative, I've definitely said that word more this month than my entire life. But you're right. Like, I really, really did want to be intentional, specifically in the beginning, like the first week after George Floyd was murdered. A lot of people were kind of rushing to like give messages, like put out statements. And I kind of saw that. I saw a lot of our schools kind of flubbed up their statements and got some backlash. So as a student government, I wanted to make sure I was acknowledging the events, but then also kind of giving hope with actionables. I didn't want to just be performative and just say something because I felt like something needed to be said. I wanted to kind of give something. I wanted to tell people something they could do or say something that we were doing. So I kind of took a while to make sure I was reflecting on my own state, reflecting on our school as a whole, because I think a lot of people think, oh, systemic racism, it's a national issue, which it is, but it's perpetuated by all of these little microcosms of environments that keep this racism alive. So as an institution, we can do a lot as MIT to change what systemic racism we're like perpetuating. So that's what I did. In our email to students, we acknowledge everything, but then we also gave actionables and our initiatives that we're going to change the institution.
Yeah, and that's it right there. It's the pairing of the acknowledgement with the action steps. I think a lot of people sometimes feel like if they acknowledge, it's going to be seen as weak, and so they choose not to say something. But in reality, when you acknowledge something, it's more authentic, and it actually causes people to connect with you. And so the perfectionist model can actually do more damage, at least in my opinion, from what I've seen.
Definitely. I think I was watching a TV interview and someone was like, America wasn't founded on racist ideals. Like, read the Constitution. It says we the people. And I'm like, all right, let's pretend everything's perfect. That works.
Oh, gosh. Something that you keep bringing up good points, because it does really start with there. So I've been leading an anti-racism campaign all month. And the first thing that I've realized is that a lot of people don't actually know the real history of the United States of America. And so if it's founded on what you're saying, people are not able to even see the world in a different way. When we bring up things like white supremacy, I found that a lot of people have thought that white supremacy only means skinheads or Nazism, but it's KKK, exactly. But it's much more than that. And so there does seem to be this need for an education and a re-education as well as an unlearning.
Yeah, it shocked me to hear that, like, some people who grow up in the South never even learned about the civil rights movement. I think there was someone on CNN who said she grew up in Mississippi and had no idea who Rosa Parks was.
Oh my God.
So I think as long as, even within our education system, it's not prioritized to teach people, they're most likely not going to learn.
Absolutely. And then that begins the dehumanization process, and then, people start to see world from their point of view. So, okay, now you have... you've had an interesting career. I was looking soccer, and now this. And what is your goal ultimately? Are you looking to get into STEM, or are you looking to be STEM as well as an advocate for women and other people of color? I'm very curious as to how you're launching your career, because I know that this is the beginning of great things for you. So I want to get
Yeah.
the scoop.
I think that no matter what career path I choose, I will definitely keep advocacy in mind. I think no matter where I've been in my life, I've been able to manage to keep that a priority. But I do actually hope to merge my passions for STEM and humanities. So I want to be a patent lawyer. So I'm interested in learning all the technical aspects of inventions, and then later helping to litigate and especially help close the racial innovation gap and help like Black inventors secure their patents.
Just trying to save the world, just closing the racial gap, achievement gap, making sure there's more equity in business. I love it. Okay. Well, MIT is known as an Ivy, it's just one of the biggest, and most recognized institutions in the school, in the world rather. And I'm very curious though, because it does have some stereotypes, right? You have stereotypes as to the type of students that go there. And sometimes the stereotypes tend to lean into this idea of elitism, basically separation from the society. How have the students taken to what's happening right now, and how can we stoke more advocacy in schools like MIT?
Yeah, I think young people everywhere kind of got a wake-up call. The only thing I could parallel it to would be March for Our Lives. I think when I was in high school, it was a really big thing, and I think people saw students walking out of class, organizing protests, so they kind of saw the potential to do that themselves. Even my predominantly white private high school did a walkout, which I was surprised of because I'd never seen advocacy at that level before at my high school. But I think we're seeing kind of a reignition of passion around issues, but that passion is now paired with action. So I think, I don't know if your social media is the same way, but on my Instagram, every single story is about Black Lives Matter, sign this petition,
yes,
email this congressperson. So I think we're really leveraging our social media aspects, even at MIT Kids, in a way that we typically, I think quarantine's helping as well. Typically you can go around, be busy. Everyone's kind of stuck at home and forced to focus on the change that they're able to make.
No, you're right. I mean, my social media platform is full of the same thing. And that's what has made this more, rewarding. I'm of two minds. I was very mad. Sometimes still I am, and also hopeful. It's like I always describe myself as an angry optimist, because I was saying, did it take this for you
That's
to?
Real.
Yeah. And then I'm like, oh, okay, so you're still showing up. But the interesting thing with 2020, which has just been, I don't even know where to start with 2020, but it's been such a year. You ran an election in COVID. We are witnessing a civil rights movement during COVID. It almost feels like the situations and conditions were suited for these type of things to happen, where everyone is home mostly, there's high unemployment, and people are in front of the internet. And all of a sudden, people can finally sit down to listen. So my question to you is, how did you approach your election and the advocacy that you've now become known for during COVID? I'm sure it had to change your plans. I can't imagine you running for election pre-COVID thinking you would do the same thing you were doing that you did to win the election.
Yeah, so I think I was lucky. I actually didn't decide I wanted to run until after COVID. So
okay.
I think most of my platform was focused on COVID. I didn't want to pretend like everything was fine and the same dorm or housing issues or dining hall issues were the same. So I really did focus on COVID, but I think just in terms of this past year, me thinking what the next year would look like has dramatically changed. And I think, honestly, initially I was a little scared. I thought a lot of our agenda would be swept up with COVID, kind of just completely focused on COVID. But I think this national conversation is giving us an opportunity to really push for change. So I think it really it's challenging and it's rough and it's hard to see this, but I really do think there's a silver lining and that change will come.
There is a silver lining. There's a silver lining. You're 20, right? So will you be 21 by the voting time, or I'm curious about that, because the reason I'm asking is I'm trying to see if there's a way to get more, I guess, civic responsibility heightened in MIT. But I don't know what the process is like over there, and I imagine that the voting age can start now. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
voted already. Previously, I think we have something called MIT Vote, which is an organization on campus, and then even within our student government, we have a public affairs arm. So we're actually really excited to focus people on 2020. Before we were planning on bringing people to campus. I don't know if that will work out, but I think we'll be very creative in the events we can have to try to spur civic activism. So it should be
Yeah. Yeah, because yeah, exactly. Now is the time to do it. This is an election year, so whatever your thoughts are and platforms are, I think it's always good to investigate what the platforms are of the people that you're looking for. And yeah, so that's good to hear. I want to dive into Danielle, the person. When she's not saving the world, what does she like to do?
I think you foreshadowed it. I like soccer. I grew up playing soccer, so that's my main thing. I think my fun fact on our website for student government is that I've watched every episode of Law and Order SVU.
You watched every single one. There wasn't like 20 seasons or something.
Yeah, I can't even remember the number, but it's crazy.
Well,
My mom's addicted.
Oh, your mom. Okay, it's just a family thing. You know, they're doing a spinoff with I guess Millennium. I forget the guy that used to be there. Yeah, see, thank you, educated me already. I heard they're doing a spinoff this season, so that's interesting. Soccer. Do you follow the professional leagues? Premiership, La Liga,
on and off. It gets a little crazy. It's so hard in college. When you go to college and you do not have a TV. In middle school and high school, though, I was obsessed with Chelsea.
Joe, you and my brother. I'm a Manchester United fan, so I don't know why we have a rivalry. Okay, all right. Chelsea, yes, that's my brother's team. Wow. Okay. So there's that. And you're trying to bridge STEM with advocacy, and you're obviously very, you seem to be an advocate of well-rounded leadership, where you understand that things need to be approached in a macro and micro perspective. You don't strike me as reactive, right? And even when you said you took your time to come up with something to say, it seems to me that you have this well-composed demeanor. Did you get that from your parents, or from role models that you watched growing up?
I think I had to learn it myself, honestly. I think it's kind of unfortunate. I think a lot of Black women growing up, if they're passionate about saying what's on their mind, they're very quickly coined an angry Black woman. And I think I had to deal with that a lot. So I think just in terms of figuring out the best way to get my point across and kind of the best way to affect change. I think I just grew into my personality now. Before, I was definitely a little more hot-headed, a little more yelling at everyone if they said
hey, I relate. So I'm Nigerian, and I ended up growing up in 5 countries, and I had to deal with the angry Black man stereotype, and I'm very passionate, right? So I'll just be like, no, this is wrong. This is injustice. And it was interesting, just as I would express my opinion, how it would be perceived, by different audiences. And, which is one of the reasons I love having the mic now, because I can actually say things without feeling that. But I found during this last 3 weeks, I've been triggered randomly. I'll be watching the news or something would happen, and then bam, I'll be like, oh, that was 8th grade, that was 9th grade. And either I'll be crying or I'll be angry or something. And it really drives home the point that you're saying. When we grow up a lot of times in Black skin, you're often told to not experience your full humanity because of the consequences. And it almost feels like now, at least for me, I'm freer enough to experience myself without worrying about that thing happening or this loss here, or just being myself. So, when you said that, that's what I was thinking of. So I don't know if that happened to you, but at least that's been happening to me over the last couple weeks or so.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I also realized is kind of growing up, I think you have less control of your environment versus when you get into college, you can really it's sometimes a bad thing. People really silo themselves off. But one thing I realized was I had a call as an alumni with Black students at my high school.
Yeah.
And they're talking about how exhausting it was having to explain why people should believe Black Lives Matter and why people should understand what's going on and like not talk negatively about protesters. And I was like, wow, I actually haven't experienced that in a couple of years. And I think it's because like in college, you kind of do have the opportunity to only hang out with who you want to hang out with. So I think it can really quickly, like, especially with social media being like a bubble, you can really like bubble yourself in. So I think versus growing up in a predominantly white high school, middle school, elementary school, you're kind of in that environment. That's where you have to live versus like being an adult and getting to choose who you talk to.
That's so true. That is absolutely true. And I think that's one of the things that we all have to be more mindful of, especially as we're starting to understand that there's a racial divide, there's system of white supremacy. It's making sure that as you get older, you're not operating on your bias and just creating this in groups that alienates other people, right? It could be good and bad. Obviously, you want to bond with people that you have things in common with, but doing that at the risk of systemically oppressing others is a dangerous thing, especially when you're like, oh, I didn't realize that was happening. So I think you said your generation got a wake up call, but I would submit to you, I think the whole world.
The whole world did, definitely.
I think they did. Okay. Well, with other things in your, I guess, in your coming up in the year, I don't know if you've thought about the fall yet, but are you coming back on campus, or is it going to be virtual?
That's funny. Have I thought about the fall? Yes, I actually have 7 meetings a week with MIT administrators talking solely about COVID-19. So that's nothing else on my agenda. But so I'm constantly thinking about the fall. We will be making our decision before July. So very soon, people will know if we will be back on campus.
Okay. I tried to get the scoop. She did it. She's been well trained. She says she didn't reveal.
I don't know.
Okay.
Above my pay grade.
Above your pay grade. Okay. So before I pass it on to Karine DeMeyer, I'm very curious though about the youth listening to you right now. You occupy a place of influence right now. You're a role model, and other kids, other young Black women, other young Black girls, and even young Black boys, or might be looking at you and thinking, how can I chart a path for myself where I do something that is true to my true self, but also grow and make sure that I don't let the world define who I am? What would you say to that young kid?
Yeah. Whew. It's a lot of pressure, but I would definitely say that perseverance is key. I think it's really easy to look up at someone and be like, oh my gosh, like they're so great, look how they got there. But like anybody who reached any point was told like 100 times that they could never get to that point. They were told not to apply to that school, not to apply for that scholarship. It wouldn't be worth their time. But I think it's really important to set a goal for yourself and stay determined and do what it takes to get there. Because I think there will always be people, and I wouldn't even call them haters, because they're people who like want to support you, but just have like smaller visions than you do. So I really, really, really cannot exclaim enough how important it is that you trust yourself and trust your ability to succeed, because you can do it, and nobody knows what you can do except for you.
That's right. Nobody knows what you can do except for you. Did you have that along the way, by the way, haters or people setting smaller goals for what you were, what you want?
Definitely.
I mean, please, I would love to hear some examples. I'm sure some people will be able to learn from that.
Yeah, I was definitely told, oh, MIT, like, you want to go to MIT? Like, that's a lofty goal. Like, good luck with that. I was definitely told, oh, you got into that AP class? Like, I didn't. Why did you get it?
Wow.
Definitely a lot. Just, I can't even highlight.
It's
even
just
with soccer.
So many. Yeah.
Even with soccer, just like, oh, Scholar Athlete of the Year? Really? I didn't even know you played. Or the best one, honestly, which isn't even that bad, but everyone says, I didn't know MIT had a soccer team.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so it was like an introduction, double introduction. Like, oh, she's player of the year and we have a soccer team? Wait, what? That's amazing. Yeah. Wow. No, I really love the authenticity that you're displaying and how authentic you are. Before we pass it on, I wanted to know if there was anything you had on your heart, anything you felt like was a calling or something you felt compelled to say, given what you've experienced, where you are looking at the future. Just curious. I want to give you the floor.
Yeah. I think we already touched on it, but honestly, I think the best thing for me to highlight is just in terms of like how hard things are right now. I think a lot of this is really heavy on a lot of people, and I've also just seen within our own communities, like within Black communities, people just like infighting. And I think it's very easy for a lot of people to be stressed right now and lash out. But I think it's really important that everyone takes time needed to reflect on what they're feeling and take time for self-care. I think especially with how social media is now, everyone wants to stay on, post everything, watch everything on the news. And it's honestly way more important that you prioritize your own state of mind. So that's my highlight. Self-care and self-love.
Preach. This is the snap. That is amazing. I can't disagree with you at all. Self-care is so important, particularly for people in our community. And unfortunately, I've been hearing some losses due to mental health in our community because of what's happening. And I think it's important that we check in on each other. It's important that we feel what we feel. Don't suppress it. If we're sad, we're sad. We're angry, we're angry. Let's feel those things and let's create safe spaces for each other because you deserve to feel what you feel. And don't let anyone else tell you anything other than that, because you are magic. And you've got Black boy joy and Black girl magic. It's all over the place. So that's how it's going to be. Yeah. So I want to thank you so much. This has been fun. It's been really enlightening getting to know what your plans are and, just really get an idea and a sense for, the vision you have for the school and for your life and future. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. This was fun.
The pleasure is mine. But we are keeping the fun going because I've got the CEO of Women in Tech Global Movement, Karine DeMeyer, and she's going to come close with a few messages. But thank you all, though. Make sure that if you are very, very interested if you love the conversation, rather, check out Danielle Geathers. I'm sure she's going to leave our social media platforms in with the organizers, but she's really amazing, as you can see. And make sure you support her and amplify her voice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Theo Rockson, for this incredible interview. My heart is beating because I have a feeling that the conversation that you had today with Danielle, that's the essence of what I think Women in Technology Global Movement stands for. We are a movement which was founded 2 years ago by Yumimor Aoki. The head office is in Paris, and I've been representing the movement in the United States for the last year, and I've been extremely proud. And we actually had a soft launch of our first chapter on the 28th of May, together with Ambassador Sydney Madison Prescott, who you met at the beginning of this talk. And to be quite honest, I think when you feel that the women in tech, what we can do for the world. And I think that's what Danielle also said, when like Theo asked her, so what are you going to do? Are you going to look for a career in STEM or anything else? She says, no, she says, I want to use technology in law and I want to make a difference. And, it's obvious she's a big advocate for African-American issues as well. And I'm so proud that MIT is the first university that we are hosting this Fireside chat with, because MIT has one of the most equal university student bodies, so 53% male and 47% female, and I think that's really, really impressive. And I'm so proud of Danielle because I think you're going to be one of our most amazing ambassadors. Because, as I mentioned before, we had a launch on 28th of May of the US chapter, but that was actually during the 24-hour virtual world tour. And that 24-hour virtual world tour was really born beginning of April, when we had to decide that we were not going to be able to do our global summit in Paris. And so with the 17 chapter ambassadors around the world, from Peru to Australia, we put this 24-hour conference together. And All the sessions were amazing. We had over 25,000 people listening into us, which really is a big compliment. And we're almost reaching 20,000 followers. So that really also touches my heart. And the good thing is that we all noticed that one of the most important panels was the youth panel. And when we were actually having our evaluation, we said, this is what we're here for. And these women, like Danielle, and you have touched on that energy, they are the future. This is why we started the movement. And so Women in Tech movement actually wants to touch on the 17 Sustainability Development Goals. We are actually really touching on 5. 4, of course, is the quality of education. 5 is the goal for gender equality. 8 is, of course, decent work and economic growth. 9 is industry and innovation and infrastructure. And 10 is reduce inequalities. And I think that this interview today showed again is that the new generation, which is coming up behind us, and I loved it, Danielle, and I want to thank you here from the bottom of my heart, because I used to be part of the TED Women movement, and I've represented that also in the Netherlands. And in one of my last speeches last year, I said, when you are on your way to the top, or you know that you are actually excelling and exceeding, leave the door open for somebody behind you so that she can enter in your space as well. Because I think that's what we're here for. We're here to share and to learn and to support each other. And I'm reaching out to many, many people around the world, because today is a big day, because we are launching our Women in Tech Youth Ambassadorship. So please go to our website and sign up if you feel that this is actually your calling. And you can be the role model for your environment, and it'll also, of course, will help you with your new jobs. Because one of the things that I remember from the launch that we had last year in the Netherlands, and we're actually celebrating our first anniversary on Thursday. Hello, Dutch friends. Is that we asked the audience, what can we do for you? And then they said, we need new role models. We want talent programs. We want to all learn. We want coding programs. We want you to help us raise money for entrepreneurship and innovation. And so I think that's the essence of this movement, is that it's being created and built from the people from within. And I'm just honored to be representing it. And I'm happy to bring on as many, many partners as possible from around the world. And I think what we learned today is that if we bring more young people into this space, more women into this space, I think we're really going to have a good future. And also, please stay tuned, because in the fall, we will have, of course, our 3rd annual Global Awards. And we are going to be launching a new women collective, where we will be partnering with all other women's initiatives. And of course, COVID-19 and Black Lives Matter will be part of those movements. And I just want to say thank you to all of you for listening, for making the time, and please stay tuned for more.